Did you know the Bible speaks of giants who once walked among us? Prepare to be amazed by the true story of Goliath and his brothers, the mysterious Nephilim. Who were these formidable beings? According to some interpretations, the Nephilim were descendants of fallen angels who united with the daughters of men. Renowned heroes, feared for their strength and stature, they left an impressive legacy. Among them, Goliath stands out, a warrior whose bravery and combat skills terrorized the region of Canaan. First mentioned in Genesis 6 verses 1-4, the Nephilim are described as the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. It is written, "In those days there were giants on the earth, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. These were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown." The Nephilim were described as powerful and formidable beings. Their feats and actions were legendary, and many believed they possessed supernatural powers due to their celestial origin. Goliath, being a descendant of this lineage, carried the heritage of the Nephilim in his flesh and spirit, becoming one of the most feared warriors of his time. Over the ages, the Nephilim became synonymous with terror and oppression. They were often seen as enemies of God's people, representing a constant threat to the peace and security of Israel. Goliath, with his unparalleled size and strength, personified this threat, challenging anyone who dared to face him. His presence was a constant reminder of the struggle between good and evil. Goliath grew up in Gath, one of the Philistine cities, where his fame as a warrior spread quickly. He was trained from a young age in the arts of war, learning to wield heavy weapons and wear impenetrable armor. His presence on the battlefield was enough to frighten the bravest hearts, solidifying his reputation as an almost invincible adversary. The elders of Israel often spoke of ancient times when the Nephilim walked the earth. Stories of giants and their grand deeds were passed down from generation to generation, reminding everyone of the power that once opposed them. Goliath was seen as the last great giant, a shadow of the past that continued to haunt the present. His defeat seemed an impossible task. Despite his fame and power, Goliath also embodied the tragedy of the Nephilim. Cursed by their origin, these giants bore the weight of an existence marked by struggle and isolation. Goliath's life, full of battles and conquests, was also a search for acceptance and purpose in a world that saw them as aberrations. Goliath's presence on the battlefield was a constant reminder of the ancient struggle between good and evil. He was the personification of all the giants who came before him, a living proof of the Nephilim heritage. However, the arrival of an unlikely opponent would change everything. 1. Historical context. The conflicts between Israel and the Philistines date back to ancient times when the Philistines settled on the southwest coast of Canaan. The Philistines, originating from the Aegean Sea, brought with them technological advancements and superior military skills, including the use of iron weapons. Their constant presence and quest for territorial expansion led to frequent confrontations with the Israelites, who were still consolidating their tribes. The first significant mention of the Philistines in the Bible occurs in the book of Judges, where they are depicted as oppressors of Israel. In Judges 13-16, the story of Samson illustrates the ongoing struggle between Israel and the Philistines. Samson, a judge of Israel, fought against the Philistines, highlighting the Israelites' resistance against Philistine domination. The conflicts were intense and ongoing. During King Saul's reign, the Philistines were a constant threat. In 1 Samuel 13-14, Saul and his son Jonathan fought against the Philistines in various battles. The Philistines' technological superiority, especially in iron weaponry, made Israelite resistance difficult. The battle between David and Goliath occurs in this context of continuous warfare and Philistine oppression over Israel. The Philistines not only had military superiority but also controlled strategic territories along the Mediterranean coast. Their 5 main cities, Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gath, formed a powerful alliance. Goliath, being from Gath, symbolized the power and threat of this Philistine alliance. David's defeat of Goliath represented a hope for Israel's liberation. The conflicts between Israel and the Philistines also had religious implications. The Philistines worshipped pagan gods like Dagon, contrasting with the Israelites' worship of Yahweh. This cultural and religious clash exacerbated tensions. The Israelites saw military victories as a confirmation of their God's superiority, while defeats were considered divine punishments for disobedience. The battle between David and Goliath, narrated in 1 Samuel 17, occurs in this historical context of Philistine oppression, technological superiority, and religious confrontation. 2. Characteristics of Goliath. Goliath was literally a giant, standing nearly 3 meters tall, as described in 1 Samuel 17 verse 4. His presence dominated the battlefield, and his stature was a testament to his unparalleled strength. Stories of his feats spread throughout the region, increasing the terror he instilled in his enemies. His imposing size was a powerful psychological weapon against the Israelite soldiers. The Israelite warriors looked at Goliath with fear. None felt up to the challenge of facing such an imposing adversary. Goliath's height symbolized the Philistines' power and the threat they posed to Israel. Each day he challenged the Israelite army. The soldiers' confidence dwindled, and fear grew. Goliath was a symbol of the invincibility of Israel's enemies. Goliath wore a bronze armor weighing about 57 kilograms, as described in 1 Samuel 17 verse 5. His armor included a helmet, a coat of scale armor, and greaves, making him almost impenetrable. Each piece of his armor was made to intimidate and protect, further highlighting his perceived invulnerability on the battlefield. He seemed to be an adversary no man could defeat alone. Goliath's coat of scale armor shone under the sun, reflecting light as a sign of his invincibility. Weighing 5,000 shekels of bronze, this piece of armor was both protection and a declaration of his strength and wealth. The Israelites looked at this coat of armor and saw not just a warrior, but a symbol of Philistine oppression. Goliath's armor was a shield against hope. In addition to the coat of scale armor, Goliath wore bronze greaves that protected his legs and carried a bronze javelin between his shoulders. This level of detail in his armor showed that he was prepared for any attack, reinforcing the idea that he was an unbeatable adversary. His physical preparation seemed unmatched. Every part of his armor told a story of power and domination. Goliath carried an impressive spear, the shaft of which was like a weaver's rod, and the iron point weighed about 7 kilograms, as described in 1 Samuel 17 verse 7. This formidable weapon demonstrated his ability to carry heavy armaments and his skill as a warrior. The spear was both a physical weapon and a tool of psychological terror, further increasing the intimidation he caused. Goliath also had a shield-bearer who walked ahead of him, carrying his shield. This detail, mentioned in 1 Samuel 17 verse 7, shows the extent of his preparation and the importance of his presence on the battlefield. The shield-bearer represented an additional level of protection and reinforced the image of Goliath as a well-defended and strategically prepared warrior. Some texts mention that Goliath and other giants had 6 fingers on each hand and foot, a characteristic associated with certain genetic conditions, as indicated in 2 Samuel 21 verse 20. This unusual physical trait added an element of strangeness and mystery to Goliath's figure. Polydactyly was seen as a sign of his difference and power, making him even more fearsome in the eyes of his enemies. Goliath is also described as a champion of the Philistines, a position indicating his superiority and skills as a warrior. His combat experience and training from youth, mentioned in 1 Samuel 17 verse 33, explain his confidence and bravery in challenging the Israelite army. Goliath was a symbol of Philistine oppression, personifying the power and continuous threat they represented to Israel. 3. Goliath's brothers. Goliath's brothers, though less known, shared his imposing stature and Nephilim heritage. Lami, the eldest, possessed a tactical intelligence that complemented Goliath's brute strength, while Ishbi-Benob and Saph, the younger ones, were known for their agility and unexpected speed for giants. Together, they formed a formidable core in Gath's military elite, feared and respected by both allies and enemies. Within the walls of Gath, Goliath's brothers were seen as protectors and champions. They not only fought on the front lines but also actively participated in civic life, helping to shape the warrior culture of their city. Their homes were large fortresses where battle plans were drawn, and their voices resonated in war councils, influencing the Philistines' military strategies. The relationship between Goliath and his brothers was complex. Though united by blood and their common destiny as Nephilim, there was an underlying rivalry, especially in terms of leadership and recognition. Lami, in particular, often found himself in conflict with Goliath, struggling to assert his own identity and worth outside his more famous brother's shadow. However, when Goliath faced David, his brothers stood by his side, offering their support and strength. But would that be enough? 4. Challenges and oppression. For 40 days, Goliath challenged the Israelite army, mocking and provoking the soldiers of Israel. Every morning and evening, he would go out to the battlefield and issue his challenge, hoping some warrior would have the courage to face him. This constant provocation tested the patience and faith of the Israelites, making each day a psychological and spiritual battle. The oppression was palpable. The soldiers of Israel trembled at every appearance of Goliath. His presence was overwhelming, and his incessant challenge seemed insurmountable. Goliath's persistence symbolized the continuous oppression the Israelites faced from their enemies. Each day that passed without a response increased the despair and hopelessness in the Israelite camp. Goliath was a giant who seemed impossible to defeat. However, Goliath's persistent challenge also set the stage for an extraordinary demonstration of faith. David, a young shepherd, heard Goliath's provocations and felt a holy indignation. He knew the true battle was not against Goliath but against the disbelief and fear that had paralyzed Israel. David's courage began to shine in the growing darkness. David decided to face Goliath, not with armor or swords, but with unwavering trust in God. He knew that the giant's persistence could only be overcome by perseverance in faith. Each day of challenge was divine preparation for the moment when David would rise and show Israel and the Philistines the power of the living God. His faith was the secret weapon that would change the course of history. 5. David and his preparation. In this setting, a young shepherd named David emerged. Trained only to care for sheep, David had unshakable faith in God. He had no military experience but trusted that God would enable him to face any challenge. When David heard Goliath's provocations, he felt it was his duty to defend the honor of God and Israel. He volunteered to face the giant. David was brought to King Saul, who tried to equip him with his own armor. However, when David tried on the armor, he found it too heavy and uncomfortable. He decided to trust in the simple methods he knew. Rejecting Saul's armor, David chose 5 smooth stones from a nearby stream and put them in his shepherd's pouch. With his sling in hand, he was ready for battle. David's choice of stones was an act of careful preparation. He did not underestimate his adversary but trusted God to guide him. The smooth stones symbolized the simplicity and purity of his faith. David knew that with God's help, even a stone could bring down a giant. His preparation was both practical and spiritual, combining skill and trust in God. As David approached the battlefield, he heard Goliath's provocations again. The giant mocked his youth and appearance, but David remained undeterred. Instead, he declared his faith in God and his confidence that the Lord would help him defeat Goliath. David's words were full of conviction, and his faith was unshakable. He was ready to face the enemy. Goliath laughed at David, considering him easy prey. However, David stood firm, knowing God was with him. He took one of the smooth stones from his pouch and placed it in his sling. With a quick and precise movement, David launched the stone toward Goliath. The stone struck the giant's forehead, penetrating his skull. Goliath fell to the ground, dead, and David's victory was complete. David's faith in God transformed a simple stone into a powerful weapon. His preparation and trust in God were rewarded. Goliath's defeat was not just a physical victory but also a spiritual one. David showed Israel that true strength comes from God and that faith is the most powerful weapon. His courage and preparation inspired all who witnessed the event. 6. Confrontation with Goliath. On the battlefield, David and Goliath faced off. Goliath, confident in his height and armor, mocked David, a young shepherd with no military experience. However, David responded with courage and unwavering faith in God. He declared that the battle belonged to the Lord and that God would help him defeat Goliath. David's words echoed through the valley, filling the Israelite army with hope. Goliath, full of anger and disdain, advanced toward David. He raised his spear, ready to crush the young shepherd. However, David remained calm and focused. He took one of the smooth stones from his pouch and placed it in his sling. With a quick and precise movement, David launched the stone with all his strength. The stone flew through the air, hitting Goliath squarely in the forehead. David's precision was guided by God's hand. The stone penetrated Goliath's skull, bringing the giant to the ground. Goliath, the imposing Philistine warrior, was dead. The Israelite army erupted in cheers of joy and triumph. David's courage and faith had won. He ran to Goliath's body, took the giant's sword, and cut off his head, showing everyone the victory of God. Goliath's defeat caused panic among the Philistines. They fled the battlefield, pursued by the Israelites who were now filled with courage and confidence. David's victory was not just a physical triumph but also a psychological one. The fear that Goliath had instilled in the Israelites was replaced by renewed faith in God. David had changed the course of the battle with a single stone. Goliath's fall was a devastating blow to the Philistines, not only emotionally but also in terms of their status in Gath. Goliath's death signaled an imminent change, not just for his family but for the entire power structure within the city. As the Philistines fled, the Israelite army pursued their enemies, defeating them and freeing their lands from oppression. News of the victory spread quickly, and David was hailed as a hero. His unwavering faith and courage inspired an entire nation. He had shown that with God on our side, we can overcome any adversity, no matter how great or strong it may seem. David's victory over Goliath became a legendary story, told from generation to generation. It showed that true strength lies not in stature or weapons but in faith in God. David, the young shepherd, had defeated the invincible giant, showing everyone that nothing is impossible for those who trust in God. The battle of David and Goliath became a symbol of hope and faith. David's courage was an example for all who face challenges. He showed that with faith in God, we can face any giant. His story reminds us not to rely solely on our own abilities but on God, who enables us to overcome. The battle of David and Goliath is a lesson in humility, faith, and courage, teaching us to trust in God in all circumstances. 7. Victory and its consequences. David's victory over Goliath marked a turning point in Israel's history. The oppression of the Philistines was broken, and the people's faith in God was renewed. David became a hero, and his story was told from generation to generation. He showed that with God's help, anyone can defeat giants. His careful preparation and unwavering faith are examples for all of us, reminding us to trust in God in all circumstances. Goliath's defeat was a devastating blow to the Philistines, showing that human strength and technology were no match for God's power. This victory highlighted divine intervention in favor of Israel, marking a turning point in the struggle between the two nations. David's trust in God surpassed Goliath's confidence in his heritage and abilities. Israel now saw its future with renewed hope. David's victory also had a profound psychological impact. The fear that Goliath had instilled in the Israelites was replaced by renewed faith in God. David's courage inspired others to face their own challenges with faith and determination. The story of David and Goliath became a symbol of hope and resilience, showing that faith can overcome any obstacle, no matter how great it may seem. This epic battle continued to inspire generations, becoming a source of teaching about humility and faith. It showed that true strength comes from God and that victory does not depend on armor or weapons but on trust in God. David, the young shepherd, had defeated the invincible giant, showing everyone that nothing is impossible for those who trust in God. The battle of David and Goliath became a symbol of hope and faith. With Philistine oppression broken, the people of Israel could live with more security and prosperity. David's leadership began to stand out, and he eventually became king of Israel. His faith in God and courage became a model for all leaders who came after him. The battle of David and Goliath was more than a military victory. It was a triumph of faith. David became an example of leadership based on faith and trust in God. His victory over Goliath was just the beginning of a series of achievements that showed the importance of trusting God in all circumstances. The story of David and Goliath is a lesson in humility, faith, and courage, teaching us to trust God in all situations. David's victory changed the history of Israel forever. David's victory also had a profound spiritual impact. It showed that God is always with his people, ready to help them overcome any challenge. David's faith in God was rewarded, and his story continues to inspire all who face seemingly insurmountable challenges. The battle of David and Goliath is a powerful reminder that with God on our side, we can overcome any obstacle. 8. Legacy and symbolism. The epic of David against Goliath transcended generations, influencing a vast range of artistic and literary works and representing the eternal battle between good and evil. This narrative has become an inexhaustible source of inspiration for creatives in various fields throughout history. Often, this plot is used as an allegory to illustrate how the weak can surprisingly overcome the strong, highlighting divine intervention and virtue. Literary figures like John Milton and William Blake drew deep imagery and themes from this story. Through works like Milton's Paradise Lost and Blake's biblical illustrations, they explored the clash between antagonisms, with Goliath symbolizing evil and David as the emblem of divine justice. Such contributions helped disseminate and revitalize this biblical account in different cultural settings. In the visual arts, the battle between David and Goliath inspired paintings, sculptures, and films, with Renaissance masters like Michelangelo and Caravaggio depicting the tension and emotion of the confrontation. These works continue to motivate and educate about the values of faith and bravery. Globally, the saga found resonance in oral traditions and folklore, being adapted to reflect the specific challenges of various cultures, perpetuating its message of hope and triumph. This phenomenon of adaptation and transmission highlights the universal appeal and enduring relevance of the story. Moreover, David's fight against Goliath is often cited in sermons and theological texts as an example to illustrate spiritual and moral precepts. Religious leaders use this narrative to strengthen faith, resilience, and divine trust, especially in difficult times, emphasizing its perennial value in the spiritual and community realm. Goliath also resonates in the mythologies of other ancient cultures that tell of giants and heroes, like the Titans in Greek mythology and the Jotuns in Norse mythology, where these figures represent colossal challenges to gods and mortals. The prevalence of these tales suggests a universal interpretation of monumental and threatening forces. In contrast to other mythologies, the biblical narrative stands out for its focus on divine providence. David defeats Goliath not by his own strength but with supernatural assistance, emphasizing the supremacy of divine power over any earthly or mythical entity. The multiple cultural and artistic references to the figure of Goliath enrich our perception of this biblical plot, showing how David's fight against the giant transcends its original context, adapting and remaining relevant in various eras and societies. This impact on the arts underscores the depth and lasting impact of the biblical legacy. 9. Spiritual weapons. David's victory, achieved with a simple sling and a stone, often serves as a symbol of the superiority of spiritual weapons over physical ones. In the Bible, this battle is an iconic example of how military metaphors are used to illustrate spiritual truths. David's modest choice represents faith, prayer, and trust in God, starkly contrasting with Goliath's imposing armor, symbolizing reliance on strength and human resources. In the spiritual realm, tools such as truth, righteousness, faith, salvation, the Word of God, and prayer, described in Ephesians 6 verses 10 to 18 as the armor of God, are our means to combat and triumph over evil. David's story against Goliath emphasizes that our ultimate victory lies in our alliance with the divine, not in human capabilities. Facing Goliath, David placed his complete trust in God, forsaking traditional weapons. This act of faith is a powerful lesson on how we should face challenges in our lives, whether personal, temptations, or greater adversities. The narrative encourages us to use our spiritual weapons, prayer and faith, to overcome obstacles that at first glance seem invincible. The simplicity of David's weapons, the sling, and the stone, highlights the effectiveness of uncomplicated spiritual solutions compared to the complex and heavy arsenals like those of Goliath. This simplicity emphasizes that for spiritual battles, more than advanced skills or resources, it is essential to have faith and trust in the means God provides. David's conclusive victory reiterates that the battle is the Lord's, as stated in 1 Samuel 17 verse 47, emphasizing that we should place our trust in God, who is the true provider of victory. Spiritual weapons are effective because we rely on divine support, whose strength is indomitable and definitive. The narrative of David and Goliath teaches that true security and strength come from our relationship with God. David's simple yet effective choices demonstrate that faith, prayer, and trust in God form the most powerful arsenal. His victory not only inspires but also encourages everyone to use such weapons in our daily challenges, reinforcing the conviction that with divine support, we can transcend any adversity. Therefore, the metaphor of spiritual weapons in the confrontation between David and Goliath teaches us about the power of faith and dependence on God. This story not only motivates us to use these tools in our daily battles but also reminds us that with God on our side, no adversity is too great to overcome. This teaching remains a central pillar of Christian faith and is relevant in all ages, with David's victory serving as an enduring testimony to divine power. 10. Lessons of humility. Goliath's story teaches that physical power and size are no match for humility and trust in God. David, a young shepherd with no military experience, defeated Goliath, an experienced warrior and giant, with a simple sling and stone. This narrative underscores the importance of humility and faith in God, highlighting that true strength lies not in appearance or physical abilities but in trust in God. David exemplifies humility by rejecting Saul's armor and trusting in divine providence. He did not attempt to match Goliath in physical strength or armament but used the simple tools he knew. This humility and trust in God allowed him to overcome an apparently invincible adversary. The narrative teaches us that humility is an essential virtue for achieving spiritual victory. Moreover, the story of David and Goliath demonstrates the reversal of expectations often found in the Bible. God chooses the young shepherd instead of the king or experienced warriors to defeat the giant. This choice underscores the message that God uses the humble and seemingly weak to accomplish his purposes, challenging human conventions of power and success. David's victory over Goliath also teaches the importance of trusting God rather than self-sufficiency. Goliath trusted in his strength and armor, while David trusted in God. This humble trust is what secured David's victory. The narrative encourages us to depend on God in all situations, recognizing that our strength comes from him, not from our abilities. The lesson of humility in the story of David and Goliath also applies to everyday life. In a world that often values strength, success, and self-sufficiency, the narrative reminds us that true greatness lies in humility and trust in God. This perspective challenges cultural norms and calls us to live according to the principles of God's kingdom. Humility and faith are our true strengths. The story of David and Goliath is a powerful lesson in humility and faith. It teaches us that no matter how formidable the challenges we face, humility and trust in God are our greatest strengths. This message continues to inspire and guide those who seek to live a life of faith and obedience to God. David's victory is a testimony to the power of humility and faith. The story of David and Goliath is one of the most inspiring narratives in the Bible, rich in lessons of faith, courage, and humility. Throughout the text, we explore the historical context of the conflicts between Israel and the Philistines, the imposing figure of Goliath, and David's unwavering preparation and trust in God. David's victory over Goliath marked a turning point in Israel's history, breaking Philistine oppression and renewing the people's faith in God. Goliath, with his impressive height and heavy armor, symbolized physical strength and reliance on human abilities. In contrast, David, a young shepherd, trusted not in sophisticated armor or weapons but in divine providence. This contrast between the two characters highlights the central message of the narrative. True strength and security come from God, not from appearances or human capabilities. Goliath's daily challenges tested the Israelites' faith and patience. For 40 days, the oppression seemed insurmountable, but David's courage showed that persistence in faith can overcome any challenge. David's trust in God was the key to his victory, demonstrating that with faith, we can face and conquer any adversity. David's careful preparation, choosing 5 smooth stones and trusting in the sling he knew, symbolizes the importance of using the simple and reliable tools God has given us. This practical and spiritual preparation reinforces the idea that faith does not eliminate the need for preparation but complements it, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary. David's victory had profound and lasting consequences for Israel. It not only freed the people from Philistine oppression but also elevated David as a hero and eventual king of Israel. His leadership, based on faith and trust in God, served as a model for future generations, showing that true leadership comes from service and humility. David and Goliath's legacy continues to inspire through art, literature, and oral traditions. The story transcends its original context, finding new meanings and applications in different cultures and eras. This power to inspire and teach highlights the enduring resonance of the biblical narrative, keeping the message of faith and courage alive. The metaphor of spiritual weapons, like David's sling and stone, reminds us that simple tools, when used with faith, can be more powerful than sophisticated weapons. The story encourages us to trust in God and use spiritual weapons, like prayer and faith, to face our own giants. This lesson is central to the Christian life and remains relevant in all ages. Ultimately, the story of David and Goliath is a powerful lesson in humility, faith, and courage. It teaches us that no matter how formidable the challenges we face, trust in God is our greatest strength. This narrative continues to inspire those who seek to live a life of faith and obedience to God, reminding us that with God on our side, we can overcome any adversity and achieve great victories.